Oh,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, I'll try and keep my swearing down, I guess. Yeah.
For the record, right?
All right. Well, they know. I have one more.
So John's not gonna be here tonight?
who?
John is in LA.
Yeah.
Steve's supposed to be here. I don't see him yet. But I just texted him like 2 minutes ago.
Well, we're in the process of changing over to computer cellular. And it's not as easy as they make it out to be on TV.
They never-
Your cell phone provider?
Consumer cellular.
They use the
There he is.
Sprint network. Always new programs, always promise a lot. So trying to load a Zoom meeting.
No, I'm just, there's only. Steve's on there, us and 2 other people. Hey, Steve.
Good evening.
Who are the other people, just so?
Lori, and who's Tree Hugger? Okay, anonymous citizen.
You like they were there last month.
Yeah.
They were. We see them in planning and zoning all the time. Too.
All right, well, do you want to kick this off? This may be super short.
Is it 6?
You know what, 6? Yeah, it's after 6.
Okay, well, I'm calling this meeting to order. It is a special, well, it's not really a special meeting, but the Planning and Zoning Ad Hoc Committee on the Plan of Conservation and Development. And I'm Marion Stay. Tony is over there.
Wants to introduce ourselves?
Sure,
Yeah.
Tanner.
Tanner Steves.
Okay,
John White, Fred Jordan.
Alexander Strobel.
and we have Lori on Zoom.
Can you guys hear us okay, by the way?
Excellent.
We can hear you. Thanks.
Make it sure.
Okay, and Steve is on Zoom. And so the first item is the revision of the vision statement, which I think you all got.
Yep, I even printed some out.
Here, copy. I've got one.
And I also have a written one, in case somebody has a question.
Let's see.
And the question is, if you think this captured what you all wanted it to. From the discussion of the last
I'm gonna
meeting,
screw this up.
and you had some comments,
I
right?
think we're underselling ourselves, underselling ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, because this to me reads almost more of the same. And we're not gonna change the town. We have a town that relies way too much on residential taxation for its grand list.
Mhm.
And I'm not seeing where we're saying we're gonna change or improve our town to where our property values for commercial districts will be more desirable and therefore more taxable as they are in other towns than what we have now. I mean, we have buildings in the center strip of our town where right now, because of their actual value, there's no point in investing in them and restoring them or improving them. In fact, even some years ago, we lost, if you go to the north end of town, there's a gap in that beautiful road that otherwise would look like it did 100 years ago. Because there was no incentive to maintain it at that time and still, or rebuild it. And there are other structures that could also fall into that same category down the road, because quite frankly, we're just not doing enough to improve the economic climate in the town to make it happen. And, I mean, the very fact that our Economic Development Commission has chosen not to show up. And we've had joint meetings with the Planning and Zoning Commission where they have not shown up. We've spent money on a survey that they were supposed to promote, which we still do not have the results of. In fact, I asked about that and I emailed back to Steve on that. Or to John, I think it was. are we even gonna have that to look at? And obviously we don't. So I think we've got to really look at what we're doing here before we write a broad statement on what we want to do. When our own EDC doesn't have a focus or a direction. And what we're gonna do about that.
Do you feel? I'm just focusing on the vision statement solely. Do we feel like the vision statement itself captures what we want to say, knowing, I feel like vision statements are generally broad, right? And then our plan that we're making, wouldn't we include a lot of what you're saying, right?
Well, to me, the fact is that it's not giving us a focus or a direction. It's not saying, hey, we're gonna be dynamic and we're gonna do something. It's saying, oh yeah, we have a nice little town, we're gonna keep it that way, and that's pretty much what it says. And,
Well, it tries to say everything at once, which is
and
sometimes when you say everything at once, you don't. say-
we're behind the area, and I don't just mean Chester and Essex. We're way behind the area in terms of economic development. I mean, yes, we have a good town for kids to grow up in and do things in. But if we don't provide for young people to stay in the town, and we don't provide businesses, business opportunities for people to work in the town, what are we gonna have? We're gonna have a bunch of old people sitting around with high taxes.
So specifically, related to that, we envision a deep river that forms the economic. Blah, 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 hub. And then we envision growth and development, including redevelopment. That encourages economic participation. So that's all touches a little bit on what you're saying, but I agree, it's not all that specific. Is there another statement or sentence?
Well,
you would
I
like to
think
throw in
that
somewhere?
envisioning is a nice fluffy word to use, but I think we should have goals, and we should say our goals in our vision statement, not what we're envisioning, but what we're gonna do and what we think we should change. And then say, this is how we're gonna do it.
I guess to play devil's advocate, like obviously we're an ad hoc committee, right? And like obviously we all have goals, and I know we come from different, like, different experiences and everything else, like. I would feel like you'd want to be careful, like being too specific in a vision statement, because it's like, we can't guarantee anything, right, as a group. So to
And
then,
the results of previous POCD plans speak to that. Because we didn't say, we have a drive and this is what we're gonna do.
I think going forward that when we've talked about this before, our POCD, we want to be different. We're gonna have, this is what our goal is, and also this is how you accomplish it. We've kind of gone over that because of the old POCD didn't say anything. It just said, this is a nice town to live in.
Yeah, so a goal could be strengthen commercial district on Main Street. And, one of these strategies or objectives could be, I don't know. Tax incentives for improving structures, you know what I mean?
That's my.
There you go.
You and I have talked about it a lot,
That's-
so yeah.
Very specific and right up their alley.
I think that. Because the vision statement needs to set goals.
I think that we could do both without being specific, because I agree with both what I think you two are saying. With the vision statement, we don't want to say like, this is how we're gonna go about it, we're gonna incentivize these tax, yada, 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 but I think that to touch on what me, Fred, and Tony was just saying, this reads terrible. So it's unfortunate because it's just a lot, it just sounds like it's something you would put out there to say, hey, look, we're doing stuff. Whereas I think we can strengthen what Fred is saying, but without getting in any detail and just come at it more so strengthen the economy of this town, rather than saying, oh, we're gonna go about it. I'll be honest, I didn't give this as thorough a read through, and I'm assuming everybody else maybe didn't as well, but I don't know, I think
It's a short read.
can we eliminate it? Like, if we just think it's fluffy and useless.
It's more so, no, I think we can restructure it a little bit. It's that I think we need to address needs. not
So,
visions.
I guess I look at this like, so at my school, right, like as a school district,
Yeah.
all school districts have vision
Yes.
statements.
Mhm.
And in general, the vision statements are just a quick
Broad,
overview.
super
And it's
broad.
very broad. And then do school districts have goals? 100%. But that's not put in a vision statement. The
Page
vision
2.
statement is just kind of,
That's just-
is a little fluffy in regard to that. It's an overview of like, this is kind of like our town, what we're about. And then, yeah, you have to have systematic, like, these are the plans we have, and this is what we want to do, and we have goals on how to attain it.
And
So
that's,
maybe in our vision statement, we could address our shortcomings.
I think that. What
And
we
then
did-
address what the alternative or what the potential is.
we
And
might
how we go about
lose,
doing it.
I was
I-
thinking. I'm the wordsmith,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm throwing out things. How about we envision a plan of conservation and development for Deep River that strengthens the economic. Educational, housing, blah, 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 but I wanna
Could I,
put economic maybe first.
could I
or
make
something.
a suggestion?
Sure.
Maybe it reads something like, but could you reread that sentence? I'm sorry. that you
That's
just
all
said.
right, we envision a plan of conservation in Deep River,
That
and
maybe have like that is goal orientated. Something like acknowledging that like the plan itself is going to have specific goals and ideas in it. Like, I think you could say that in the vision statement, we're
that
designing.
has goals to strengthen the economic, educational, housing, cultural, recreation, and civic hub of the Lower Connecticut Valley. I mean, that's gotta be put in for brand.
Something
correct?
like that,
and it
yeah.
becomes the civic program.
But I feel by acknowledging in the vision statement that there are goals, we don't have to say what they are yet.
Right.
But it tips the hat to like, no, there's goals that we have set in place.
I feel like you have to start with some sort of words, page of
Right,
words.
there has to
written
be.
up.
Right.
And then like literally page 2, goal 1 could be strengthen the economic, strengthen the economy of the commercial
So I
district.
think you could even say, envision. Whatever we have, but through a systematic. Plan, I don't know, I don't want,
Can
now
I-
I'm starting to yeah,
Somebody
Oh,
chime in?
I am. Yeah, I just want to chime in. I agree that the vision is a vision. And what John was saying about all the organizations and the state agencies I've worked for, they have vision statements. But I like the idea that you're discussing about having this because it's the first thing someone's going to read. So why not say, and I liked the way that sentence was getting formed, that you were just writing down that the plan of conservation and development for the town has goals that include economic, educational, housing. The following document provides the detail for all these goals. And then maybe sometimes upfront you can have like executive summary, possibly. Or you can just, when you get through the rest of the document, you can list the goals right after, these goals are outlined as in the following pages. And you can put like goal 1, as I just heard someone say, is improving economic development on Main Street, or whatever you want to say, right up front. But maybe just, leave a placeholder there. So that John and Steve remember that we need that.
I was the checklist that we did when we first sat upstairs with the pizza and all that stuff, that list was, I thought, phenomenal. And I thought it was a great start. I don't know that it goes in the vision statement. I'm thinking second page, there's a punch list of here's all the things we're gonna discuss in the
Yeah, like,
POCD.
Like I'm the top 10.
Right,
These
yeah,
are
right.
these are the things we want.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I think that would be a page 2 type of a thing.
Because there's also, because this gets done first and then we move on, if we put together the checklist now, not that you can't revise this, but we also haven't had any public input, and there may be something all of us have overlooked.
Right, which
know.
is why we wanted the EDC.
Right.
But on the other hand, I can see in the vision statement at least elevating economic development.
To go along with that, Marion, I just kind of wordsmithing something in the background here to kind of build off what you said. And I think if we do want to go the route of trying to emphasize the economic development as really like a binder for everything else to follow, maybe we add a statement there in the bottom paragraph that says something like, we envision a plan of conservation and development that prioritizes economic development of the town as a catalyst for the achievement of future goals, or something
Just
like
like
that.
that
If we want to
one
put that
word.
in the
That's
forefront.
well said.
Yes,
That was, I think the exact words that I'm looking for is something that solidifies this as a priority. This is not, this is, I don't want to be the alarmist, but somebody has to be in this.
We don't have an EDC that's functioning, in my opinion.
We don't, I mean,
We've got a survey that we
Town
still haven't gotten the results from.
within 10 years.
There's
it's
literally no one on the
Gonna
camera.
be
Tony,
This
can I
has
share my
a
screen real quick?
vastly different landscape than it does.
If I
now.
can figure this out from over here.
Hit that green button.
Let's see, menu.
Steve, do you or John have any access to this survey that the EDC holds?
I saw your email and I apologize for not responding to you, but I was trying to get a hold of some information. I have not received anything.
Well, how long has this been going on?
John said
I'm
last meeting, or maybe it was the meeting before, that he was gonna do a FOIA request.
well, yeah, but he's trying to,
It takes a while, but
Need a FOIA request on a town commission.
But, well, there we sit.
that's what he said.
but maybe. Before we go too far, let's give them until 7 o'clock.
Steve's got a bail right at a couple minutes before 7, but I was pretty clear that it was at 6 o'clock. I talked to Pete and Nick, and
Okay,
it just
You
no
know, we've had
response.
joint meetings in the past that there was no attendance, no
Mhm.
representation. I think at this point, and I guess this is for tomorrow night, but I think we should be talking to Angus about this.
Agreed. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
That's okay. Worthwhile points. I plugged this sentence in here just as a placeholder for now. Open to thoughts about the wording, where it fits in this paragraph. Zoom in here.
so we're,
I think we're gonna have to get rid of, it would probably be the economic growth of the town rather than development right after development. Development that prioritizes the economic development of.
So call it
some
economic growth.
Instead, I don't know, it's just something. Somebody's gotta have a thesaurus here.
no,
I don't want it to sound like a Cortez.
And then I know we're getting ahead of ourselves because with the new wordage there, I think then whatever those goals are that follow, I think should still remain balanced. Like obviously the economics is important and I'm not belittling that, but I also don't want to overshadow some of the other points.
Well, I think that goes on the second page. I think that if we were to, and we've kind of chosen one thing, this economic growth. That's really the only thing that we need to have let's get away from the list because that is something, we've said something. And now, how are we gonna do that? And then the second, third page, that's your punch list of stuff. I'm getting nervous about this being too wordy, but then also too fluffy, but then also too, definitive in. So it's, at first, I didn't really realize how delicate a balancing act this vision statement could be, but listening to all you who are all professionals in this sort of industries where this is not normal in my world at all. So, but I'm understanding that it's a balancing act. So let's get it right. I mean, let's get something that isn't long, isn't, overly wordy, something that somebody can look at and say, yeah, economic growth. I like that. Let's flip to page 2 and see what these guys have been up to.
Yeah, what goals are related?
Simple.
I think maybe we can throw something in there that also would lend support and credence to it is that it would ease residential taxation.
I think it's a guarantee we couldn't.
Yes.
I don't think we can guarantee that. So to put it in a statement,
If you have good commercial taxation,
Or you're gonna ask,
that could be
and it allows you to set aside money for open space. It allows you to set aside money for conservation. It allows you to do a lot of things that other towns around here do that we simply can't afford to.
I don't disagree, but I think. By mentioning it in something like this, I don't think it's the appropriate spot. Only because it's like
I think it would lose weight.
if it didn't happen, right? If we didn't accomplish that, then it looks even worse because it's like, oh, well, they.
If we don't accomplish that, I think we're in trouble.
Well, again, I was gonna add, so we made a big statement about development, economic development. We've made nothing of, like, we're still like a little fluff on the conservation part.
That's kind of.
It's a conservation and development, so it's
Yeah.
gotta have one of each.
That's what I meant by the
I-
balance.
I think one
that was
can
my
overshine
point is that a good economy
Yes.
allows you to do the other, accomplish the other goals that you want.
Well, at the end there, you say, all of the, at the end there, economic growth while maintaining the integrity of our natural resources.
How about
That-
supporting,
That's sort of the
how about
balance.
supporting using that to support the conservation of our natural resources?
Yeah, I like that.
How about
idea.
using that to strengthen or.
Yeah, support,
Strengthen,
strengthen, yeah.
You know,
Take your word.
Just for my own understanding, when we talk about economic growth, like what would EDC, what does that look like? What is that to you guys, economic growth?
So my understanding of what they do is so the bank building that's empty,
So commercial space,
but just in general, they wanna help. So, if there's a piece of property that they see that's subdividable, they should be finding somebody that does that. And that should go to everyone. It should, hey, did you talk to open space, the bank building? And have they looked for somebody to
Property up
develop
the
that?
street or across from the package store.
Right.
so economic growth is distinct from, say, residential development. Like, do you consider those things separate?
No, they're supposed to look for everything, how they can help this town in general.
Which would also include things like open space
Right.
too.
And again, we talked to them a little bit in the beginning and we keep going back to them. We talked to EDC in the beginning a little bit and I thought it was going well and it just stopped. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, usually they're the cheerleaders.
Yeah.
For-
I like that.
Well, no, but
Right.
for economic development,
Dick
for,
Smith was the one-man economic development commission, period.
They're supposed to come to you with, here's 30 things we think, and you're like, well, Jesus Christ, we're not doing that, or, these 7 are good, but not all, so there's supposed to be a nice balance. But I don't think they've ever brought anything to us.
I've only heard of them.
Can I ask a question?
Of course,
Well, while we're on this topic, does the Economic Development Commission have staff?
have what?
staff.
Oh.
Understaffed, apparently.
Yeah, they actually have their own website and everything. They do a great job. They work with the merchants a lot.
I
I used to.
I was a member of the Merchants Association for a few years and I never once saw a member of the EDC attend one of our meetings.
Oh, that's not what I was told. Good.
Oh, who was it? I don't think Jonathan was a member, right?
Oh.
I didn't, and all the meetings I attended, I never saw from someone from the EDC. Come on meetings, and since then, Merchants Associations kind of dwindled due to lack of interest, I guess.
That's, you know what, now that we mentioned that, I wonder if we should have reached out to somebody from merchants to be on this.
There's very few left.
I know,
You know,
but it's still,
Stacy from the Riverwind was heading it up, but then, she got overwhelmed and
Yeah.
there just wasn't enough support from the rest. And many of the business owners that are in town are not like the bricks and mortar
right,
storefront.
Right.
They're business owners, but not that. So, I mean, I was a member of the merchants. I'm an oil burner guy. Do I have benefit from that sort of an organization? Not so much, but I
right,
joined it to help support the town businesses
right.
in any way I could. Well, I figured this was a better avenue.
So, yeah, here we are on EDC again, though. So,
Could I, you guys could look at this later on when wordsmithing. I just pulled up the mission statement for my school. Do you guys want to hear it quick? It's 2 paragraphs. So it just says, the mission of Chester, Deep River, Essex, and Region 4 schools is to engage all students in rigorous and collaborative educational programs. We prepare our learners to be respectful citizens who are empowered to contribute in a globalized society. So that's part 1. It's like pretty general, right?
Yeah.
And then they do sort of hit on some goals. So 3 strategic initiatives that focus the efforts of our districts are A, a pre-K through 12 focus on critical and creative thinking, B, the continued development of our assessment practices, C, support teachers to implement best teaching practices, teaching and learning practices with an emphasis on higher order thinking and skills. So like, it's all very general, but it's hitting upon things that you elaborate in other.
I like how short it is.
Yeah,
And critical thinking is different from rote learning.
correct.
So that being a part of it. You make that.
There was two things I took out of that. I thought engaging the public was something we should have, because you mentioned engaging. But we should have, we should be engaging the public too. That's something that was sorely lacking for a long time here. And maybe we mentioned, the focus, because you had your three things, is maybe the focus is on the expansion of EDC expanding some of their stuff, and the focus is on conserving certain parts of the town. And maybe those are, a couple words we could throw in there too, since we're wordsmithing.
Well, it's making the economic development areas of the town more viable.
Right.
As well as the recreation areas of town, or the natural areas of town without plowing through them.
Yeah, I feel like, this could be looked at if it. When you're actually making. Specific decisions,
Right.
like, here's 20 acres of undeveloped space. We'd like to rezone this for commercial and put in whatever. And let's say you're trying to balance it, it's a 50-50 thing, there's people in favor, there's people against. You look at this. And we say, okay, now there's no longer everything sort of balanced, it's economic, the growth is the priority.
Right.
So the 20 acres gets squashed.
Right.
That's how I think, like you were saying, it could be a little dangerous to push toward one avenue.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and I see what you're saying, but also I feel that if we don't. Have something constant.
Some direction.
That's right. The three goals thing, I think, was good.
So, but even with the three goals, I think that a lot of like the overall tone of that was, I kind of saw was like a more like critical thinking based environment that the school was trying to. I realized it was only mentioned once, but also the rest of the stuff, and nowhere in it did it say, and making sure that kids still learn Shakespeare or
So
something.
yes,
like
it
that.
doesn't get
was-
overly
it was
specific, right? Yeah.
Very much, we're trying to create an environment that is very fluid and a place where children can learn on their own almost without saying so much. That's what my takeaway, but everybody's takeaway is gonna be different. And I'm certainly not saying that this needs to say we need to be not at lower taxes, that's an extreme. Save the whales, that's an extreme. We need to be in the middle ground where I realize, sure, saying, economic development might be a little bit more towards the.
Because I think what I worry about, because I think on the surface level for like a layperson, right? Like when you hear economic development and you hear stuff like open space, they seem like things that are contradictory to one another.
I think the opposite. I think if we're talking in layman's here, I think people are gonna say, I think the typical American citizen these days is gonna say, oh, economic growth, sure. Like, what do you got for me? That's good things will come from that.
I do feel, and maybe this is my own opinions leaking through, is I think the people who have the means to do things like big developments and things like that, they want to make money, which is their right. But on the other side, I'm thinking of the land trust specifically and the state like purchasing lands, like there's not a lot of money. So then it's basically again, like you're up against people who want to develop and they don't, maybe open space is not a high priority and they have the money to do it. With another group of people who want to preserve open space and can't compete per se. So
Well, that's why I was asking if residential development really is sort of included with commercial development in this idea of economic growth, because say like a 10-lot subdivision with 10 McMansions is gonna cost the town money, where good economic commercial growth within the town is going to help, like you said, likely save the town money and help preserve open space. I mean, they've shown that, open space is less costly to a town than
Right.
new homes. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think that, like, I like the idea of economic growth in terms of strengthening existing commercial activity and expanding it
While still
while
protecting.
protecting open space, you know?
Well, also, I think that, and how far away from the conversation we want to get, but I think education can help alleviate any of this. I mean, education just for the people in this room, but also, you know, education for the people of the town to
Yeah,
know,
like,
so that they can understand
How
what
does a
this,
mill rate work, right?
yeah, like just right down to basics, but also down to, you know, what, you know, what does all this mean? What does all this actually look like? Because, you know, you've got my argument, which is, you know, look at the areas that have invested heavily in, you know, subdivisions and stuff like that. I mean, you could argue they're not doing that bad. You know, if you want to look at the books and all that kind of stuff, sure. I mean, the town probably was taking a hit here or there, but also their day-to-day, their quality of life has gone up. You know, rather than,
Subdivisions will cost you the education end of things more than you'll ever get out of taxes. Actually, better off with a McMansion because generally that's not full of kids.
Yeah, I mean, education budget is usually what 2/3 of the town's, any town's budget.
Right, I mean, but to get people to, you know, you also want people in your town spending
Right.
money, and that comes with.
And you want
that.
your family- and
What's
keep it
the
going.
second largest industry in the state of Connecticut? Tourism.
What's that?
Tourism.
Oh, it's in prison.
yeah,
Sorry, but it is what it
hey,
is.
it could be present.
Could be.
I don't know, it just,
It is.
Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, I couldn't hear who said it, but somebody made an excellent point. And I don't want to get too far off track here, but you know, when you think of economic development, I think you're primarily thinking of commerce and commercial development, but that's not to say that residential development shouldn't be in support of that. What I mean by that is when I envision a scenario where, you know, if you know, our vision statement of this POCD is really centered around this idea that we should expand our economic development and our commerce, and you know, we should consider ourselves to, and our goal to be the hub of this tri-town region. But if we are expanding our commerce, that, you know, to go along with that would be prioritizing maybe higher density residential development where people are doing their commerce, you know, in the downtown area, so that those businesses are supported, so that they're viable, so that they're sustainable. So I think while there should be a strong balance, and I think we've kind of started to strike that with some of these language in there, trying to maintain the integrity and support for our natural resources. If the town, if you know, if this group wants to say that economic development is their priority, and that, you know, one of the stronger priorities of the POCD should be economic development, I think that's okay. And I think we do strike the balance with our specific goals and actions, and really, you know, this is a general broad vision, but what really sets the tone for specific decision making by the town's boards, by our commissions, by our action plans, is what's really defined in those specific goals and actions in the subsections of this document.
And that's the strategies,
Yes.
the goals.
Right, yeah, like,
So you might say something like increase commerce in zones X, Y, and Z, and don't do it in zones
well, it's like
J and
checks and balances, essentially. It's like the, I don't know, the carbon buy-off stuff, where if we're gonna allow this, that's fine, but there has to be something that, there has to be a green space that will offset that.
Right.
But so I think what Steve's alluding to is that we can have, we're headed in the right direction, and we're not really losing anything or stepping sort of one way or the other by having that focus on economic development sort of as the mainstay.
I mean, I also see too, like, ideally, right, like economics should be support. I think they're entwined, like open space and economics. I think they should support each other, right?
Yeah.
So like, I think letting that be known in the mission statement where, yeah, economics is totally a priority. to support us as a town, but also to support those open, more natural spaces too. Because I think they can mesh. I think they can work together, like within the borders of our town. I feel like if we plan properly, like everyone, no one, not everyone will be happy, but you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be. I think it's possible to have that economic development down here and try to protect some more open space. I'm just rambling at this point, but I think,
But it's a quality of life issue,
yeah.
which is squishy also to some extent, but.
I'm here from CERC and I'm looking for the youth group. Who does have-
Are you doing just Tri-Town Youth Services by chance? Is that what you're?
Is there a Deep River Town Hall?
This is the town hall.
Town hall, right?
Right, I
That's
know.
not us, maybe a different room.
Oh, heard all the lights were off everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty dark in here.
Yeah.
Sure, it's not at the Tri-Town Youth Building?
Maybe, right, 174 Main Street.
No,
That's it. And what time is it at?
It started, it was at, it's from 6 to 7:30.
Huh.
Let me make it.
Sorry.
Well, they didn't show up either.
Yeah. So, I was gonna mention, because we had talked about that, I mean, we're getting off subject again, but quickly, we talked about if we have more focused development downtown, that, you know, some of that could be purchasing
Mhm.
off-site property.
Right.
So I think that fits well with the EDC.
Would it be too contradictory if you said, prioritize the economic growth without
Yeah, without compromising the the long-standing integrity of
or natural resources?
natural resources, yeah.
Yeah. I'd be
Mhm.
okay
So
with that.
call it, the blissful ignorance of my.
Maybe in that
youth,
new statement. Steve?
None of this, all this seems like
Yeah.
it goes, I don't need to have this dissected for me as I read this.
Mhm.
I
We're probably
realize
gonna be the
that,
only ones to read it.
sure, and I realize that
No,
I can't be naive and say like, oh, well, if I get it, everybody should understand what we're trying to say. But I'm also very nervous about really dumbing this down, and especially with this vision statement thing and saying, this is what we're gonna do, focus on this, what the town needs, but like, also, don't worry, because we're gonna take care of these people, and if you've got a concern about this, also don't worry, because we'll get to you guys.
I still look at the vision statement as like, this is gonna, whoever decides to read this, it will get people interested, like you're not getting too, it's like a teaser, right? It's so you're like, oh, what is this about? And then you get into the document and you can see like, well, what's the meat, you know, like what's.
Okay, so let's segue from that for a minute if I can, and say, okay, since we're writing all of this and we're gonna come up with a plan. How's the plan get implemented, and who gets responsible for implementing parts of those plans that have not been implemented, including, oh gee,
I
I
think
don't
that's
know, a
page
survey
six,
that we
yeah.
don't have results
Yeah.
from. And make actually some of these things actually happen and hold people to account, or as the old saying goes, lead follower, get out of the way. And have somebody take place doing those functions, because it's not happening.
I think that's a good idea. And Marion, you started to say something, previously the statement saying we envision a deep river, but you were saying we envision a plan, a POCD. So maybe in some place we say we envision a POCD that will be used, or we envision this to be a document
Exactly.
that
Guide-
should be
guide.
implemented and actionable.
I see, you got a
items
way
that
you
should
could phrase that?
be implemented.
yeah, he was doing that, but I can't quite.
And I mean, that could maybe be in the previous paragraph or something.
Or,
like
or, you know, at least some of that can be reworded to off.
I think
for
if we
Draft number 3.
keep it, if we if we do this structurally based and we say like, okay, we have 2 paragraphs rather than 3. That also might help, and I think what you guys are trying to wordsmith right now needs to be the opener. You know, let this document, let this document be a something, you know.
actionable plan that is implemented in the next 10
Absolutely,
years.
something like that, and that's kind of like, I don't want to say call to arms, but if we could get something, and this touches on what you were saying. That is, somebody reads it and they say, oh, this doesn't sound like the normal vision statement, I'll read the other paragraph, I think then we're gonna be cooking. And then on the second paragraph is what we've been working on at the bottom, but
I think the medium paragraph may be,
I think,
on
yeah,
one hand, it's a nice introduction, but that becomes too wordy.
I don't think
So,
we need any, I think we need, let this. This document, be. Used or something, I'm not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
I think
Just
that-
something different rather than this. This seems like something that you would say, oh yeah, it's from POCD. What are they not gonna do again? Okay, let's keep on.
And that's another thing that maybe we could actually work into this or into the next part of it. Is that the fact is nothing has happened between the last POCD and this one. And nobody's been held accountable.
but not
Well,
quite.
How do we
nothing, but-
change that process?
Well, after we did the survey there's only 800 options.
How do we change that process?
Well, I think, but when John and Steve were mentioning this, like I said, I think our plan is to have, this is the goal and this is how you accomplish it right in there, which nobody's done.
And this
I
is who
think
does it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's a fantastic way of going about this.
Yeah.
And, well, again, as part of the strategy, there were a
Right.
bunch of things. You could say it's zoning, the zoning commission the planning and zoning commission is the lead on changing the regulations to allow an ease of,
So you're talking about a plan of accountability though, which could be another page.
well, that goes when you develop the goals and then the strategies for the goals.
Okay.
Then in the strategy portion, you basically say which organization is
Who's in charge
responsible.
of-
And then where do we go from there when? In some cases, that doesn't happen.
That's the political realm, that you have to go and be the
Yes.
squeaky wheel.
Citizens need to,
Right.
yeah, the voice of the people.
And you can't do
So-
everything.
What I'm saying is, should we keep this committee somewhat? Even if it's a 6-month or 4-quarterly review. And then when things aren't, we don't see any changes, we go to the front office and say, what's going on?
Yeah. or
Like an
look at the
over- an
commission.
oversight.
I mean, we have that issue right now with at least one of the commissions that seems to be disinterested.
Well, again, that's another thing, that's why I think public engagement should have been in there, that's just,
So not to get off task, and I'm just relating to my own career as a teacher, where like every year, like I'm required to have specific goals that address something either I want to improve in my teaching strategy or something I want to see kids get better at, right? So that's all well and good. That's kind of what we're talking about. We're writing it down and doing that. But then what I have to do too is, then I collect data and I do all that stuff, but throughout the year, I have meetings, like my administrator meets with me to check in on like, hey, you said this in here, like, how are you doing with this? And so to your point, I think that, it is a good
You
idea.
got me, my gears thinking on that, and can't we put that in there and actually quasi require the front office to make sure that there's actually progress with real meetings, with real minutes that monitor what they're doing? Otherwise, we may not have them, may as well not have them.
Require, right, but it provides pressure for them to act.
Yeah.
And I think like a quarterly type of a thing.
I think quarterly is reasonable.
Wouldn't be crazy.
okay,
I
You
would
could even
think
publish
6
it in the
months
newsletter,
or more.
checklist.
6
Right.
months is,
Things that have not been done.
then it gets skipped and it's a year.
Well, the problem is, again, if you have planning and zoning. There's gonna be a lot in the old plan that suggested certain actions.
Many of those meetings could be held concurrently with their regular meetings, so it wouldn't really be in their way.
Yes and no, unless you've been to meetings where it lasts until 9 or 10 o'clock at night,
I
and
think
that's the
that's
problem.
all
Maybe
ask of people that are not paid employees. So to touch
Maybe
on
we
your
choose-
thing, sure, that works because everybody's got some real live skin in the game.
Yeah, of course.
And to touch on your point, this is American politics. This is why people have made careers of essentially doing what a lot of us would say is nothing.
But we don't want them to do nothing, but at the
No,
same
no,
time,
also, how are we going to, without mandating a requirement, we're still asking our countrymen, our neighbors to say, hey, stay another extra half hour and work for free to do
Right.
something that, a lot of
I don't think
people,
a progress report's a hard thing to ask for.
you don't, but you gotta understand, I mean, look at what we're up against right now. Look at how many people already don't care about this town. People, not to get off track, but I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant. People don't care about the small town stuff anymore. Everybody here has, due to their lifestyle and what they care about, they have made the time to do something to give back to their community. That speaks to us as people, but the vast majority of the people in this current economic, political, social, climate, they don't care. They're having a hard enough time going to work and coming
Surviving.
home and finding a way to stay with their wife. I hate to say it, but like, just because the people in this room have said like, oh, hey, like, let's give back. I'm very interested in giving back to the community that essentially raised me. But what I'm finding is what I already knew, which nobody cares. So how can we make people care so that they don't have to give anything to care? Does that make sense? Like, how do we make this?
I understand what you're saying. I don't know if I 100% agree in that, like, I think people do care, but I think there needs to be more education in regard to getting people involved and how you
Sure.
get involved in a town and.
Education is the key to everything.
And yeah, because I think of people I know who care deeply for the town, but because of
They're
circumstances.
just
whether-
detached and they think things
Yeah,
will be solved. without their
Or, yeah,
Yep,
they're
exactly.
detached and they're busy.
So,
If you're raising kids, you're busy.
What?
And they don't go on the website, look at what's going on. I guy that works with me, well, I don't know about these meetings. It's go on the website, you can even sign up for it. Most people
Oh.
don't know that you can sign up for the meeting announcements.
Nobody uses
the
websites.
agendas, And I don't know what they should have it down is you'll get it right in your email.
Well, the other end of this too is, there, when certain things do show up in town, we've had the public show up in droves. And it's only certain things, it depends. So there are some engaged people
and
here.
it's only certain demographics that show up.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I mean, you guys on one end of it are saying, geez, there's no real affordable housing in the area, but also look around. I mean, how many other 30-year-olds do we have on any town committee? Right. And I'm not playing an age thing at all, but like, also, I think that in a lot of these sort of political and town politics stuff, it gets overlooked that, everybody wants young people's input and opinion, but also then they say, yeah, but we got to make sure that the older community is taken care of and all that.
I think with the younger people, it's harder to get involved, too, especially if you have kids and stuff like that. Like, I think of like, when we do like the town, like when we approve the town budget, right? Like, my wife and I always have to pick who can go. If either of us can go because of the time period of it, right?
Yeah,
Like, what is it usually, like 7 o'clock or whatever the time is? Like, oh, we have kids, like we gotta get them ready for school, we gotta do
And
all this
also,
stuff.
we've got all the Zoom stuff now, which I've only ever used it for this, and it's a breeze. You could be, the amount that I travel, there are. And I don't want to perjure myself here, but there's a lot of the times when I'm in a hotel room doing the freaking Zoom thing. So the argument is kind of null and void because it takes that, hey, I gotta get down to the town hall out of it. Furthermore, my parents, they were on Board of Finance and all that kind of stuff, and I wasn't at home like, oh my God, I'm a latchkey kid. They just weren't home for an hour on a Wednesday night once a month.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to discredit anybody.
No, but Steve's got to get out of here in a minute he's got another meeting, so I don't want
I like that statement.
him getting out of here.
Sorry.
I've been trying to craft this here. I think it fits well at the end of this paragraph. I think I need John to fluff this up a bit, but what I'm trying to, I like the words whoever said, or multiple folks said, call to action. The commission desires to create a vigorous plan of conservation and development, which calls our town government and citizens to action in a coordinated effort to implement and achieve the goals and strategies within this plan.
Yeah,
That's an absolute
Beautiful.
home run.
Yeah, I mean, and
Okay.
that's people, that's, volunteers,
everybody.
that's
Yeah.
elected.
I don't think it needs any
officials,
fluff.
that's
No, I don't
Yeah,
think so.
That's a pointed statement. I like that.
exactly.
And it's not offensive, like,
No,
it's just,
no.
it's all inclusive, it's
Right.
calling out the town, it's calling out the people who live in the town and in a positive way, I think.
Nicely done.
I think it just is calling.
I know.
Well, it's part of this.
And now what does it look like though if we just completely gut the entire second paragraph? And
Or
then
put
just
it
put
somewhere else, maybe.
it on page 99.
At the center of the multi-town region, including Essex, Chester, Deep River has long retained an informal, welcoming character and fostered multiple generations of residents and businesses. At the same time, for its small geography, Deep River hosts a wide variety of landscapes and opportunities. From the historic trade at the landing on the Connecticut River and the commercial core of the village to the forests and fields of the more rural Winthrop area, Deep River offers attractive contrast. The plan seeks to reinforce and protect those critical opportunities, as well as enhancing its position at the center of the three-town area moving forward. I feel like the language here at the bottom, especially, the plan seeks to reinforce and protect those opportunities, as well as enhancing its position at the center of the region, is a key point, which we really articulated at some of these earlier meetings.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like the first three paragraphs here, yeah, they're glamorous, they're a little bit fluffy, but it really provides.
I don't think you can have the last
the-
without.
Yeah,
first.
exactly.
I think this is really well done now.
Could also even mention like having it more as like a living document too. That Lori actually texted me. She was like, yeah, like, like, so it's not like set in stone, like it is. Lori, is that kind of what you were? Sorry to put you on the spot. I know you texted me.
No, that's fine. I just didn't know when to break in, John. I didn't want to interrupt your conversations. Yes, I think if we could say that I think Steve, you used the word vigorous plan, but also a living document implies some of what I heard you guys talking about where you want to have updates. And I think that's critical. Like I have been involved with many plans that do not get implemented. And the only way to have anything happen is to have, regular check-ins, how are we doing meetings? And however we need to say that, I think that's an important goal. Now, I'm really I'm actually horrified to hear that our own committee that's so important to the town is not showing up at your meetings and that we've spent that money. I remember taking that survey. It's kind of infuriating. And also if we're paying them, if we're staffing that committee and we don't have access to that information that we also paid for, who do we talk to? Anyway, that's it. You guys really, I just wanted to make the 2 points that a living document is critical. And that we should definitely put in some regular check-ins on the document and a committee that, maybe it's this committee who's in charge of monitoring the progress of this plan.
Excellent point. I think like we said earlier, we need to make sure that we're coordinating our implementation strategies specifically in the sections of the regulations, but with our overall focus being so heavy on implementation and the fact that we actually want to see the ideas in this plan come to life, that maybe at the end of the plan we have a statement or its own section for general implementation. Not to say that it's like a threat, but just to really articulate how strongly we feel that we want action on this.
I think a timetable of meetings.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Already delineate when those reviews will take place.
Yeah.
Not every 5 years.
But, I know Steve, you gotta run, but guys, anybody online, you guys can just jump in. I mean, because we're just rambling off here too. So, yeah, just feel free to jump in whenever. Anyway, I'm good with what he's written.
So we'll dress that up again and I'll look at it before the next. For the next meeting. And then I like this printed, if this wasn't too big of a deal, whoever printed.
No, it's my boss's computer. He's here.
Okay, so we're all happy with this. I'll make sure we get this distributed again for the next meeting.
Okay. Cool. All right. So that's our not to take over here, but that's the vision statement part of this. And are we moving on? So Steve, you gotta jump off, or you're gonna?
Yeah, we'll get myself and John we'll get like an agenda together for the next meeting. Whatever needs to get sent out in advance, we'll get it well in advance, and we'll start figuring out what the next steps are. I'll admit I don't know completely off the top of my head what we're diving into next.
Yeah, we were gonna start talking about kind of implementation and how the plan should read, topics, whether we wanted to follow the old COPD or the state has one, the regional planning commission has one, just to see what it's gonna look like in print. And then start to look at the goals. I think we all took that survey, which I went through today. And it just seems like most goals, people are still in favor of. But you're right, some of them didn't get implemented, most of them didn't get implemented.
Thank you for jogging my memory. We'll go over results of that survey, and we'll get out some different copies of different plans and kind of see what format we're open to and how we want to format that in terms of sections and breakdown implementation.
All right.
Awesome.
That's
Yeah.
all right. That's oh God, ethics
Oh,
in the other room.
They're gonna be busy.
All right, I'm gonna hop off.
All right.
Good
Thanks,
night,
Steve.
everybody.
good
Have a
night.
good night.
Did everybody take this survey? Everybody able to?
I didn't.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, it took me a
I took it twice, so.
I took
I
it twice.
did.
Yeah. They put one out and then I did it and then they're like, shit, we're gonna change this.
A little procrastination goes a long way on something like that.
You know what's funny is I went through it like right after he sent it.
Yeah.
And I was looking at a lot of these things and I was like, that's a good idea, but it hasn't been implemented.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an option. Like, I think this is still a good idea, but I have no clue if it's been implemented.
Yeah.
I didn't
And that's
like
what the
all that.
majority of them were.
Same thing, like, yeah, he was right. This one.
Yeah, so I,
Talk about conservation and wetlands, and I could go way back with this. When the Connecticut River was considered a dirty cesspool,
Mhm.
Giff Warner from Essex, Connecticut, bought a boat. And he started Riverboat Incorporated and started running tourist excursions on the Connecticut River. When people still thought it was a dirty, filthy place. In fact, there was a movie, and I wish I could find it anywhere online. It was called Long Tidal River. And Katharine Hepburn actually
Oh, yeah. I
did a
remember
guest
that.
spot on the boat. And they talked about the Connecticut River, and it brought forth a lot of awareness. He didn't have to necessarily make a lot of money running a boat anyway, but it was a business.
Mhm.
But he brought people to the river, and people got to see the river that didn't get to see the river before. And that's where tourism does help conservation. And in that, if people don't know it's there, they don't see it.
Right.
They don't get a chance to experience it, and we're in an area that's right for that. And then when they're on their way to do those sorts of things, they empty their wallets out and shake them out into restaurants and stores in the area at the same time. And he did tremendous things to bring awareness to the situation the Connecticut River was in. And that led to a lot of the cleanup efforts on the river. I'm not giving him sole credit, but it sure did bring a lot of awareness. And by the '70s, you could, if you were daring, you could swim in the river at high tide. I did.
So, dare I say, it's 7 o'clock.
Well, they're supposed to, the second meeting was supposed to start at 7.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. We're both meetings deep now and there's no number 3.
Well, I had barely 7.
All right, well,
so we just start the next meeting.
I mean, it's all one meeting, so I'm just gonna keep.
Oh, gotcha.
If Marion's okay, I'm gonna
Yeah,
keep
no,
going.
that's fine.
We can go back to 3 if anything happens, but I doubt it. So other commission updates, planning and zoning commission. I'm glad everybody's here because I have a bunch of questions about a couple of subdivisions that came forward preliminarily. So there's a preliminary subdivision on River Road, which I think you guys have mentioned.
I didn't know.
Yeah. And has Bob Dillon come to you about that? Because they were lacking open space.
So they came last month with a plan.
Yep.
Bob didn't, but.
Bob did, yeah,
Cool.
somebody worked.
Okay, yeah.
And basically they showed the subdivision. We had inquired about an open space requirement. They had said, oh, at the time, they said, oh, it's
it's exempt because he's going to be giving it to family members.
Hmm.
So our lawyer was there too. They were kind of like, well, basically, do you have proof of that actually?
Right.
And then with that in mind, do you have an area or anything with an open space setback? So they kind of like delineated an area that they were like, yeah, I guess over here. And then, yeah, fast forward, it was put on the market. That's
Yeah,
what the email.
So
said.
for River Road, he wasn't intending to give that to a family member. You're thinking, Falls Landing. At River Road, it was gonna be for sale. Yeah.
Was it?
Oh, okay, so that
3
was my
units.
mistake.
Correct.
They're
Yeah.
just subdividing and then.
Yeah,
a
and
little
so-
setback up right by the river or right outside.
Okay,
of
so
the
that
marsh,
was my
right?
bad then, if I.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna go to the other one anyway.
Yeah, so,
But so,
for River Road, it's an existing 25 or so acres to be divided into three lots. And
Yep.
we just simply asked, is a open space set aside required for this
It is.
subdivision action? And they didn't know, and they didn't have it drawn out as a lot. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you're answering that question. So that will, and then you saw the lot for sale, and it's like, well, you can't subdivide, you can't sell it unless.
Right.
you've
And
got
it does
lots
say
approved.
in it too,
Right.
like pending approval.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
so they had, well, so just if you haven't seen it yet, they penciled in a big, like in the wetland and tidal wetlands. They're like, oh, this is gonna be a conservation.
But is
restriction.
that? Yeah, build on it anyway.
Right,
But
and
that's my thing. It's like,
So,
it can never be developed anyway. So
Right, and
that's not really.
well, I said, is the land trust even gonna accept this? And you guys could go, yes, it's perfect for kayaks and blah, 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 blah. But that's not my call. So I said, look, if they'll accept it, we will, but so he clearly hasn't come back to you yet, so.
Lori, I know you reached out to him, right?
Yep, and he has not yet called me back.
He reached
Can I-
out to you, right? Initially?
I don't, yep, he called me and then I called him back probably yesterday. But we haven't actually spoken to each other.
Okay.
Can I ask you guys a question? Do we have, if the property that they need to, to follow our regulations for open space set aside, can they give us money instead? Do we have a place where they can put money
Yes,
in
Just-
lieu
yeah, we just
of
made
the
that
open
change.
space?
That was my suggestion.
Isn't that the Kelsey Hill, the same thing? They were just gonna buy their open space?
no, because they're only doing 2 lots, so they're not
Oh,
required yet.
Right?
That was the other one.
So
So,
Kelsey
another
Hill
one?
actually called me also.
Kelsey Hill.
yeah, so, what the hell was it? One on River Road. If you don't see any viable property. Why are we echoing? So if you don't see any viable property for open space, you can recommend that they give monetary. And that is in the regulation, so. Which is why I
That's
sent.
great.
Yeah, which is why I sent them to you guys in case that it was, totally useless and you don't have kayaks or anything.
I think by law, it can just be a chunk of undevelopable wetlands, unfortunately.
It can.
And that satisfies the
It
requirement.
depends though.
They didn't have any access.
Right, but I think in our regulations.
Right.
There's a percentage.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a percentage of wetlands, but it can't be all
It's
wetlands.
a ratio
Yeah.
of the
Correct.
overall size.
Yeah.
right? But I don't think that necessarily it's bad if it's undevelopable, because it's still a piece of nature.
Oh,
It's
yeah, I
still
agree.
Something
Right,
that they
yeah.
can't just say like, oh, nobody can go on that. If somebody wants to go on it, or birds or whatever, they can't do something in the future that would hinder, open space. So I don't think it's bad. I don't think,
Right.
I think that would be better than the monetary buy-off even. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe.
The other thing we're gonna check is, I didn't look closely at the property, is it even property that he owns? Because a lot of these developers will go, oh yeah, this is, we're giving this chunk and he's got an old survey and you're not allowed to own X amount of
Yeah, some
property
of that
under title, right,
titles.
under.
Because there's a
LD3 here.
setback from, right?
Right,
Cause I think like in regard to like making it like more of, like if it was a land, donation or something like that to the land trust. Obviously, ideally, it would be something that we would have access to,
Right.
which that little, how they carved it out,
right,
there's no access unless you're on a boat,
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that. There suggested carve out. I think he just sort of pointed to that area.
That generally,
Well, if we
yeah.
needed to, yeah. So we hadn't really gotten to the point of
Okay.
well, you know, is this what we would want set aside, or where would it be? It was just, they had no open space delineated,
And
so
that's-
we
yeah,
put
that
pump the
just-
brakes on it and
gotcha.
said, you have to figure this out, so.
And are they coming back this?
They should, they said they'd come back tomorrow, we have our meeting,
Yeah.
so we should hear back from them.
Okay, and then
Do we have a designated fund for open space money?
that I
in
don't,
town?
John was working on that. I don't know.
Because that's really important.
Yeah.
That's what I worry if the
That's
money
what
was
was in the
taken.
last POCD.
If, where does that money, yeah, we talked about that, and that's my fear, like, okay, if we accept money,
General fund.
Well, no, our,
Well,
where is it
yes,
gonna go?
yes.
our regulation actually specified no general fund. So
Yeah.
it's its own fund.
Yeah, the regulation does say
Because
that,
that came up at the meeting, and I think you brought it up, actually.
but I don't think the fund
Well,
was
yeah,
ever
because I've
open.
had
Yes.
Board of Selectmen wanted to do that,
Uh,
that.
create a fund,
I think, yes, but but again, it has to be separate from the,
create an account.
yeah. So,
Can we revisit that, folks, about the open space set aside fund? Can we just make a note to like get this sorted out? And I can take the lead on that if you guys want me to. And if there,
Definitely
if,
happened, yeah, we've
I mean,
asked a few times, as the Conservation Commission.
Well, does the directing of it? Is it-
Town
is it
treasurer
us?
would.
So if somebody comes to us, do we say like, okay, you guys are circumventing the open space, so write planning and zoning a check?
well, so.
no, I think, sorry, excuse me, I
No,
think,
no.
I'm pretty sure how it works is the town establishes a fund, part that the money goes in the fund. Or we could also say the money can go in the fund for the town, or the donation can be made to the land trust. It would depend on what the town wanted. That I think is something for discussion.
General fund.
I mean, some of that is sort of in the hands of the Conservation Commission too, as it was written, like. Most conservation commissions oversee their open space fund and.
Right.
But then who, and not to get off track, but then who runs the checks and balances on that? You guys get a check for, I don't know, $3,200.
I don't think we would ultimately authorize the payment of that. It
You
would probably
both
have
have
to
two
be done
new
by the
trucks.
Board of Selectmen, I guess, with,
I think
That's
you
the
should-
problem.
Oh, I think you should talk to John about this, because he was kind of cautious about this. I don't think Steve was here for this yet. But he was kind of cautious about this, and he said, look, what you really want is that. You don't want the selectmen to go, hey, we saw a piece of property, we don't care that you're not interested, we want it, and spend the money on that. So
Good point.
there was a very, there was something he mentioned, and I think that's why it's not established yet, but he wanted to look into that. So I think this is something we should definitely drag John and Steve now back in on.
yeah, I was gonna say we should put it into the new POCD,
Yeah.
like establish an open space fund, but then I was looking through the goals and objectives of the last POCD, and it's in there.
Well,
Establish an open space
Yes,
fund.
there is.
well, we have the reg now finally. I mean, it only took 12 years,
I
but
mean, you'd think we could
Does
get a
it
donation.
have to be used for? Open, this shows, I'm gonna show how little I know about this, but for open to acquire open space, new open space, or can we
That's the
simply just
idea.
use it to? Improve current open space?
Those are the only two, I don't,
I'd rather
there's no other things.
reinvest rather than continually
Yeah,
buying as a member of the town. I mean, I would say let's,
yeah, those would be the two only eligible
and
activities.
who
Well, you have to be
determines
careful.
which
I'm
is
trying to see if I
eligible?
can find it.
I mean,
Because it could just be for enhanced recreation and platlet versus a fund to really buy a precious, I can't think of a better word, a piece of property.
yeah, it wouldn't be on recreational properties, so. would
So
be
it
more-
wouldn't be
But-
for a town park,
No,
but
No.
it could be for a distressed corner of land out in Winfield.
sure, so I mean,
Or
essentially,
maybe open space.
we don't have a lot of town open space, we're unique in that, I mean,
Yeah.
Depot Land Trust owns a lot of the town's
Yeah,
open
so you
space,
get
so.
our economic development going, and maybe we can afford some.
Right, well, we only have Canfield essentially, and then there's a few pieces of open space attached to local schools.
which technically the school district owns those.
Not
For the regional
Oh,
board.
John Winthrop does,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah,
still-
you're right, yeah, so essentially all we have is Canfield, so. The situation doesn't come up a lot, because we're not acquiring new open space and we only own one piece of open space.
What
There's
is,
still a big chunk of land next to Canfield Woods and Mislick Zone that I doubt will ever get developed industrially unless the gravel pit people allow access in from that end into that property
Yeah.
because it's landlocked.
Yeah.
And that's just an example of property that is available.
Yeah, that did sell recently. didn't it?
Yeah.
Like 2-3 years ago.
Was
So,
that,
it sold like 2 or 3 years ago.
yeah,
Somebody came and talked to us about it.
yeah, but the thing is that, they,
You can't get it
they
across
want to
the
go
tracks.
across the tracks and.
Yeah, I don't think. they
Feds
thought
aren't
it-
gonna allow
I
that.
think they thought it through.
If they could get in through Essex, through that stone quarry there, that would change the paradigm.
So what we did pass, I skipped all the other stuff, but said fee shall be deposited and maintained by the town of Deep River in a separate fund to be used for the purpose of preserving open space or acquiring additional land for recreational, passive, or agricultural open space. So again, it couldn't be used to purchase
And
a firehouse.
how is the dollar amount determined?
So it's 10% of the value of the land, or I don't want to say the value of the
Market
land.
value,
Yeah.
why wouldn't it just be the?
Because it's a stage formula,
Yeah,
It's
the
a
state has it.
the stage.
So it's not what they bought it for, it's not, for-
It's
what
a
it's
grade.
It's an
not what it's
assessed
assessed.
value.
What the town assesses?
Like, if there's a formula and tells you who can make the assessment.
Sure.
I don't.
So the applicant will advise the planning and zoning commission of the fair market value of the land prior to subdivision. The commission staff will review the proposed fair market value for accuracy and report its findings to the commission. If the applicant and the commission cannot agree on fair market value, it shall be determined by an appraiser chosen jointly by the applicant and the commission. So what happened in Clinton was somebody showed up and was like, here's the town's assessment of the property.
Sure.
And everybody agreed that was a fair number and you took 10% of that. So, but you could get into something where they're like, it's only been $1.
Well, that's
know.
what that's what I'm
So you can contest
forecasting,
it,
is
yeah.
that at some point in time, somebody is gonna come through and say, yeah, I'm not paying
Ultimately, it's our decision, so we could say we want the land or.
Yeah, or you can
that.
have
No,
both
it's,
too.
yeah,
You
I
could
think
say,
that reads really well, I mean, it's pretty black
Yeah.
and white as to, you know.
Yeah. I think it works well in situations like on Falls Landing where you have a small lot already. It's
Yeah.
10 acres, so 10% of that is 1 acre. And,
Right.
You know, what would 1 acre there accomplish for conservation? I don't think that much, given the fact that your lots are already pretty big and those people are gonna have a wood space anyway, in theory.
Right.
And then also in this case on River Road, I mean, you have 3 lots essentially that would be like 8 acres in size each. Again, the footprint of development from those individual residential units won't be that large.
right,
So to me, this is really powerful in like big subdivisions where you say you're
Right.
doing like 10, 20 houses.
Yeah.
Over big acreage, because then you can actually set aside, say 10 acres, and that's what we got in for Cranberry Bog at the end of Hoop Hall Hill Road.
right.
They initially wanted to set aside like 6 acres and we just asked for more and they agreed to help move the process along. And so we got 10 acres, which was great. And it was right next to the state forest.
So
we
it has to
donated
be accessible, that a part of these deals is that whatever is set aside, it can't be in an unaccessible part.
Yeah, I forget. Is that part of it?
Yeah, our subdivision reg says that if they don't, I believe the wording is not 100%, but if land trust is unwilling to accept it, then they have to come back to the drawing board. Like, they can't just go, it's that, that swamp over there and it's landlocked, so you can't get to
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
So,
So it's up to us.
Yeah.
I suppose.
So like all this kind of stuff, just from back to the survey thing, like this is all stuff that I don't think that people in town think they want to know it, but I think this is all important that everybody in town understands that like, hey, we do have stuff implemented already that really helps make sure that, when Walmart comes to town, they're gonna have to set aside a few acres, you know what I mean? It's an attempt at humor. but-
Any sort of,
So, but that's the thing, is I think a lot of people are super against this stuff because they say like, oh, our forests are gonna go away, but also like, that's a pretty good deal for anybody,
well, since we're on the subject, I think a lot of it too is relooking at our subdivision regulations. Right now, the requirement is 2-acre lots up in Winthrop, which is great. People do want 2-acre lots,
Yeah.
but you also want the availability, and I know Ben Whalen's property,
Yeah.
that was a good layout.
Yeah.
No one's ever gonna buy that for his property, but that was a good option. That he gave twice as much open space and he got the same amount of lots. So I think, eventually we'll get there. And I think that's a big,
I mean,
big thing.
I think it's definitely coming down the pipe, and
Yeah.
we gotta have more, this is great, but also I think that
Right.
what will either make or break the town in the next 10 years. This stuff is gonna, a good implementation of checks and balances for this kind of stuff is really gonna make it, you know what I mean?
So they haven't talked to you about that one property, so let's go to Kelsey Hill. I think that was a 2-lot subdivision, so they're not required to open space, but they did come to you guys for open space or for wetlands.
There were
I thought it
two,
was 4 lots.
Yeah,
there
I
were
thought
two
they said,
Kelsey Hills.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Oh, the second
okay, the
one's-
one that's closer to town, we'll get to the.
Which is the one, so the one with,
Kelsey Hill,
um,
it's a one by Route 9.
Yes,
yeah,
I
And
thought that was the one that was the most recent one, but also it had a open space. I thought they had blocked out an open space on it. I thought it was a very
No, I don't
thin.
think they did.
the
Or they
land
said they
was
wanted to-
reached out, Lori, are you still there?
Yep.
The,
I thought that's what they
I
said.
gotta look.
the other Kelsey Hill, that was the one that your friend reached out to you, right? The one by 9?
Yeah, and we're waiting to hear back from them. They did not have it delineated, the open space. So I don't really know what part of the lot they're talking about, the north or the southern part of it. And we're hoping if anything, we're hoping it's the side that's connected potentially to the old trolley bed.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I thought it was because there was no access, so they had said, and I thought Tony said, well, you can pay, you can.
Right, because the back lot, which was the big lot,
Oh, that's.
there was a driveway and next to a pond.
Yes.
I haven't seen it, so, and it was a big, huge property in back.
That's right, we did have that discussion. They did ask about a fee in lieu of open space, and that's, so maybe they realized that they were gonna be paying quite a bit of money, so maybe that's why they came to you guys and haven't come to us. All right, so now we're getting somewhere, so maybe that is happening. They're looking to give.
But
open
it's an
space.
awkward.
Yes.
I just got the plan today and I haven't really looked at it, but I tried looking at it on the computer and it's like there's an existing road to a barn
Yes.
and it looks fairly narrow, like you can't have another trail along it,
Yeah, like
you
it
know,
would
and
be- it would
get
be
to the,
useless. And then, so then the other Kelsey Hill is the Scots, but that was the guy with the 3 family members.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Scott, the other one was on his last name, not Scott. It was on Falls Landing, the
Yeah.
intersection of Falls Landing and Kelsey Hill.
Right, and he's,
And
Well,
so-
Scott's Road is what where the Scots were.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. The other guy's
Yeah,
name
yeah.
is
I
Scott.
can't
yeah,
believe
yeah.
that flies with that there's no time constraint on how long all those family members have to own that property. They turn around after the closing and.
Yeah, that's a big deal for me. It's kind of like, well, who's to say, like, yeah, I'm gonna give it to my kids, and then.
but that's the problem, it's a state statute.
Is it a state
It's-
statute?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and so many people have complained about that, and there's like no way around it. Oh, I gave it to my brother, and
Yeah, so we didn't necessarily balk at that because we did read the state law and
Yeah.
our attorney Karen said it was legit. We just wanted to require them to provide us with proof that they were going to do that. So, yeah, and
But if there's no time constraint, it really.
Right.
Kind of moot.
right, it's essentially a good, they could then sell.
And wasn't there one more that on Spring Street that we heard like 4 months ago, and it was a guy and his wife, 2 subdivision, and then we just never heard anything else.
yeah,
I saw him erect a power line, a power post.
it
couple
wasn't
weekends
to
ago.
his wife, it was 2 brothers. And it was a free split, it
Yes.
turned out.
that's what it was.
Because that property had been in existence prior to the adoption of zoning regulations, and so they were allowed a free split.
Is that-
Which means that they get 1 lot and it's not considered a subdivision.
But it's also, because it wasn't that a holdover, and it was still considered farmland though, even in the middle of it was.
I think that might be a tax thing, not a zoning. You know, there's certain regulations you have to do for the assessor in order to be considered a farm and get, or forest land or whatever, and get a tax
That
break.
goes all the way back, I mean, I grew up on Spring Street, so I mean, that property that was. Remember the house that was there, had no running water.
Question on
So
wetlands,
Town had to be, the town demolished it.
question on wetlands, because I've heard different people say different things, but the the vacant lot in front of the Misaki house up the street here.
Yeah.
Is low. Is that considered wetlands? I've had people say that that's a vernal pool.
So you
and-
drive by that and a heavy rain event, and that's the one that's just one huge puddle.
Right.
The brand new house?
No, it's the
No.
vacant lot across from Riverwood Inn.
It's a lawn.
Oh,
Yeah,
Is that
and
the one
heavy
that's for sale?
rainstorms that fills
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
What, on Union?
so,
on-
no, literally on Main
Street,
Street,
just
right across
past the
from the package
horseshoes.
store.
Yeah,
There's like a big lot,
Oh,
and there's
well,
a house all the way in the
What
back.
about on Union at the corner of Elm
that
and
available?
Union? That same thing happens. Was it with Doan property? and
Wetlands
stuff?
are
What's it?
determined by soil types.
Right, that's what I understand.
However,
Ah,
as part of that, you can have a vernal pool or a water body.
But
or
what's
a
the
water
definition of a
course.
vernal pool? Because I
There
understand
is.
there isn't one.
No, I think there is one.
it's 3 years of egg, you see, you guys are the wetlands guys, it's 3 years of, you have to register egg masses in the, low-lying area. I think three times or 3 years in a row or something.
I'm not familiar with that definition.
That was telling me there's no definition of it in the statutes of a vernal pool.
I don't know, I thought there was, yeah.
Yeah, I thought there
It's
was
been a
too.
while since I,
Well, because I'm just wondering, is that property developable or not? Because my next question that segues into that is, I know we had a architectural review board. How much tooth does it have if somebody decides to build a dollar store there on our main street? Because I don't think that that fits in with really what our plan of conservation and development really wants.
What's that lot zoned at?
I can't place the lot work on. I know.
I don't know.
look way
Oh,
back
that-
and there's a
right on
Dutch
that.
colonial.
Yeah. With that,
They've
there's
almost
a dress out right by the, I know where we are.
It
Big
took me a
big
minute
open
too.
field and then the house is way back.
And
with
now they've
Dr.
got,
Bob's
so now
house.
they're trying to sell his land, right?
I don't know.
It's been subdivided.
Oh, I didn't
So,
know
so
that.
there's the house in the back,
Yeah.
the driveway, and there's the house.
Those big-
But the house next door is also for sale.
What's
So
that?
that's a huge chunk of land.
Yeah, so the wetlands, inland wetlands are defined by soil type, I should say, and so, I mean, it's either, wetland soil or, there is also flood
Mhm.
wetland soil,
Alluvial.
alluvial. Which I doubt that would be too, to me, that's more of a stormwater. Site that you would
I
think,
would
like, the
tend- I
town
would
would
tend to
want.
agree with
I mean,
that.
where's that water gonna go if you build that up?
It-
Into
it
a
could
parking
be
lot.
drained. It's
It could be,
poorly
yeah.
drained, very poorly
Yeah.
drained, alluvial and floodplain. Those are the
Yes,
four. That
thank you.
was 10 years ago when I
Very
was in
good.
Corson.
Right?
And wetland soil types are, well, they're determined by soil type, but if water stays there for more than 3 months or so, you'll get
Horseshoes.
these gray models in the soil. And that's a soil scientist looks at that, and even if there's not water there, when he's going and doing the augering and stuff that he does, that
That's
Just
indicative
from-
of the fact that
there's
there's any water.
weather, yeah,
So is
or
it
at some point.
poorly, so whose problem is it though? Is it the property owner? Or if it's poorly drained, can that go back on the town? Say somebody buys it and then they really get to looking at it and they're saying, oh, wait a minute, this is because
Well,
when the
They
town did.
can't develop it unless they get a permit from the inland wetland.
Yeah,
Commission.
if it's
How did
determined
they-
to be wetland soil, they could develop it with a permit.
How did they subdivide it? Cause that was always one property as long as I,
Was it a free split?
I don't know, it didn't come.
cause
to
how did
us,
that,
so
how
I
did
don't-
that, how did that?
Registered
This
by
one.
knowledge,
One
that's-
lot on the- It's currently one lot on our
They,
website.
they preliminarily had a subdivision for that, just quickly, so pursuant to Connecticut Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act, the term water courses includes vernal or intermittent water bodies. Therefore, under Connecticut law, vernal pools which contain a specific ecology are one of the types of vernal water courses. So I
And
feel like
vernal is determined by a soil science.
Right.
So it's determined, but it's more so determined by the ecosystem that
Yes.
is developed,
which
and
I
that just is just water runoff. for
That's
all intents and
water, yeah, it's
purposes.
stormwater in a lawn.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Yes,
it's tough, it's
exactly.
tough when things are degraded. I mean, it might have been a vernal pool 75 years ago.
I would
when
say
things
that
are
Or maybe it
no,
was perfectly dry till the road got put in the middle of it. stop the drainage.
Yeah.
I think it's the EPA that has the, because it does refer to the EPA standards, so it's probably where the egg mass thing comes from. But that's only from talking to Rich Snarski.
I would think the town would have an interest in some sort of stormwater easement there or something, because where's all that water gonna go if you develop that? I mean, that's a huge amount of water
Yeah.
that pools up there. It's odd, but it does.
Right.
I wouldn't pass.
But that would be,
And also,
So my point of that, all of that is,
Yeah.
are we gonna end up with a dollar store there? Do we have some kind of muscle to protect our town?
if it's
There.
inland wetlands, it's the Inland Wetland Commission can deny an application.
But isn't that, I think, I don't wanna get off course, but.
It's
that's
not a
That's
taking.
an over, isn't that a bit
No.
of an overstep
No,
on our
it
part,
is not.
or their part?
No, so wetlands has free reign. They can say
Wet-
you straight out.
Wetlands is the federal government up in here.
Yep.
No, actually, it's a state regulation.
Yeah,
It's
But yeah,
not a
they can-
town
But
regulation.
is that what we want for our main street, to block something from happening?
well,
You know,
everything.
on a technicality?
but specifically,
No, I
Is
think
it-
that.
Do we
well,
have, I mean, are we really
No,
concerned if
no,
all of a sudden
no.
there's a big ecological center up across the street from the Riverwind?
right,
Or is it that we want to protect it from not being something undesirable and to spite ourselves?
well, right now, I don't think our zoning regulations allow, let's say, a Walmart.
Yeah.
So they would have to come in, redo our regulations, and we could say, no, those regulations, that's not something we want. Or even if we did, yeah, even if we changed the regulations, we would still make a special permit where they'd have to come back to us and we go, we hate the fucking building. We don't want another Walgreens, right? We don't want to look at that again, so,
Well, if it's zoned commercial.
Yep.
You can't just deny something because it's another commercial entity. You already have one. So if somebody wanted to do another grocery store. They theoretically, we couldn't deny them because it's another grocery store and we just have one.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's also a very small piece of property.
Right.
So I don't think it would be.
Except that it's one, you can't just look at the one, because there are 3 contiguous properties for sale at the same time that are not a small property.
It's still, I'm thinking about that, but I.
It's certainly as
The
much
thing-
land as the Walgreens is on.
Regardless of potential
an acre.
business, right, that would go in, isn't there still like in the downtown area, like aesthetic kind of
Yeah.
guidelines? and
So
things like that?
That's my question.
Dan's
Do
on
we
here.
have to protect us from, because, I mean, that's prime.
I've seen,
We need to protect in terms of the character of the town, and it can be business, I'm not saying that,
yeah.
but I'm just like, what do we have that's going to help us?
So
tool
designer,
for
yeah,
toolbox.
designer review gets say
So
over what the building looks like.
Tony, can I take it a step further?
Yep.
Even if, Walgreens, we have Dunkin' Donuts, they went through a lot, right, for their permits, for everything to pass. But now look at them. And who's holding these property owners accountable to take care of their property?
Absolutely.
Nobody. Dunkin' Donuts, I mean, we tell them they have to put granite columns or columns to prevent people from driving through. I think there's one left standing.
Yep.
There's weeds growing up, Walmart's landscaping. So, I guess the next question is, we do this and we say, yes, okay, you're going to do all these things and like not have garbage cans out, but who's holding these businesses accountable? Who's responsible to do that?
So they're right, it's not planning and zoning, just.
I
mean,
don't know. I would beg
No,
to
I'm
differ
saying,
on that.
I know, I'm just saying, but this gets asked quite a bit, and I think to like Saybrook, right? If you have a building that isn't that great on Main Street, the town's gonna work with you to like, hey, how can we get this cleaned up? So I think it falls more on the town, you come in and
The
talk to the
town,
selectmen.
what, on residents?
No,
You
but
Town.
you come in-
I understand Angus has had some serious words with the drugstore people, it's just that he's stonewalled.
right, but so
I'm saying if zoning passes, if zoning passes and says, okay, go ahead, then
Yep.
why would zoning not be accountable to continue to follow up on that? Hey, your columns are down. It's a safety issue. It's a zoning. I mean, they're violating the zoning agreement.
Stipulation.
That's a good point.
But when does that expire?
It doesn't.
So in perpetuity, I have to go back through the regulations and see when but I'm just gonna pick on the town hall. When the town hall was approved,
Yeah,
and whatever that was in 1920,
Tire horse.
right, you can't, my horse can't be out front. I mean, at some point statutorily,
Well,
that has
but
to end.
if you required certain landscaping requirements at the property, that would still have to be maintained
Well, I,
for zoning permits.
so then what's the point of having a zoning commission?
Don't say that, because they could discontinue this completely.
But I'm asking, like, if, you know, we're
It,
going.
it goes back to
A
the
blight,
blight ordinance.
right.
And, I
Yeah.
think sometimes towns will take a maintenance bond for a period of time, but I think you can't do it in perpetuity, whatever
Yeah.
that word is. Yes,
Okay. So it
Um,
expires is what you're saying.
but it's
yes.
also a special action if I'm understanding correctly. So a town like Saybrook might have it because you look at Starbucks and Ben and Jerry's and. On a Saturday night, they get a little rowdy out there, but the rest of the time it looks pretty decent. So there obviously is something behind the scenes or somebody's got a finger on the button. Now, I agree with Christine.
Yep.
With what she's saying, but
I do
also
too.
it's not fair to pick on planning and zoning. I think there's a level of education that needs to be put in place here where that is not. It's not a function of it, and it's not staffed to be a function of it either.
It
Could be, but
it's
it's
kind
not.
of like a more, in the old days, a moral code.
Right.
You had a moral code to keep up your property.
I was gonna segue into that. It's the same with the properties that are now under blight.
Right.
Whatever, where the people that have to live next to these properties, and I have a property near one of them. Are upset and they're putting their pitchforks up, and nobody else in town cares, right? And that is just a factor of human nature. Now, at the same time, having a property near one of these things, I can also understand that. They're down on their luck. It's not really my deal because they're not coming on my property. So I think that is what's happening here.
The other, Christine, I don't mean to kind of brush it off, but I was gonna add that it's also, we can only do health and safety. So if there's a safety issue, absolutely, that should be addressed. You should bring it up, somebody should bring it up with the zoning enforcement officer. But aesthetics, there's no way we can, it's just not something that we're set up to do by even the state.
So
And
even like the
ultimately-
design committee and it being the village district, I mean, does that not hold any?
Time committee could probably have some sort of action, some sort of
So,
mechanism that they can
Maybe.
go door to door, but they would have to enact that.
And
Right.
ultimately, it's, basically, the town has to spend money for a lawyer to go to court.
Can you imagine
And then
getting sued by Dunkin'
problem-
Donuts?
Well, yeah, and the
Yeah.
problem then is also you have to find a judge who is willing, especially with sign regulations, to take the case.
So what you do need is you need a fine schedule, because Clinton went through this. So you need a fine schedule for, keeping up your property, but that goes back to a blight ordinance. And so you'd have to have somebody to enforce that and a fine schedule, because the bottom line for Dunkin' Donuts is they don't want it affecting their pocketbook. So if you're fining them every day for them not sweeping up trash, believe me, they're gonna sweep up the trash.
Well, I think that they'll shoot themselves in the foot because we can all see as members of the town that it's in serious decline.
Yeah.
And there's less and less cars in the parking lot.
Right.
What is bad for the town is because that will now be a gutted storefront.
Yep.
That was set up to be a Dunkin' Donuts that no townsperson, because the economic
Right.
development is in the gutter around here, is gonna be able to go in and have the capital to revamp into the knick-knack shop or the,
Right.
the burner shop or whatever it is they're gonna put in there.
Yep.
That's brings back to this whole plan POCD where we got a plan for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because Dunkin' Donuts isn't gonna, that Colonial Market, nobody would have thought Colonial Market was going anywhere. What are they gonna put in there? Nothing.
Right.
Forever.
But that's retail in general, basically. I mean,
That's it,
retail is
right.
downhill.
But the thing is, if you don't like, and I would love for there to be a team of people that go around and say, oh, let's get this swept up, let's get this, that would be Mayberry and that would be wonderful. And we as citizens, we should be doing that. We should go in there and say, guys, we'll clean it up a little bit, all right? For the AG Edwards guy next door, at least, if anything. What will end up happening is less and less people will go. I don't ever go there, the place is a dump.
Yep.
And same with the Cumberland Farms across the street, the exact same thing has happened.
I do have all of the names of the principals involved at the Walgreens building from owners and the like that I got from the town clerk's office. I'll have to dig my emails out and I'll just put them,
Something-
if they're letting the place go again, I'll just put it right on the what's wrong with the Tri-Town area and the Tri-Town page and say, here you go, folks, because I was prepared to do that, and then Angus got it cleaned up.
Am I missing something with Walgreens? That I'm not seeing?
It was kind of getting dumpy. There was.
They had weeds or cut
garbage.
grass or anything. I mean,
Oh, okay,
weeds
we're
were-
talking
were
like
this
like
high.
a landscape aesthetic, not.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
it looked like
super
it was an eyesore.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Mike Dinello's place down the street that's a showpiece.
Yeah.
And you go diagonally across the street and you got Walgreens. You know, that was a disrespect to the town
Yeah.
that really partially funded them being able to be there with that whole land swap to bottom.
Agreed, but also if as adults, we can understand if you're gonna get into bed with a corporate
Right.
machine like
Well,
that, what
that's-
do you think they care? They don't even know they have a store Deep River.
That's why you need to, that's why it'd be nice to be able to set some rules when you
That's-
make these deals.
But also, let's understand that the game we're actually playing here and the people we're playing the game with, and for us to continue to just blindly be naive about this.
But that's, I mean, that's an actionable item for the P O C D is
Yeah.
we need a blight ordinance and a way to enforce that.
Absolutely.
You know, it clearly can't be us. We can only
We
get,
could expand the reach of the design advisory board.
yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
That sounds good to me, Dan.
I just mentioned it just to think, should those pieces of property sell?
Right.
You know, just something that to keep into mind. I think if I could go back, being the neighbor of Dunkin' Donuts and address things differently, I would, you know, have more concern just because it hasn't been, you know, it's just going downhill.
That's 3 pieces of property done too.
Yeah.
It's a big chunk of land.
But
Yeah.
I get it. I think a lot of it too is, you know, to clean up some of, I mean, now we're gonna get off track again, but to clean up some of this town, there needs to be, you know, a tax break for these people. Look, if you start working on your facade, you know, we'll give you a tax break,
Are we talking residential or commercial?
commercial. I mean, this the strip, you know what,
Why
on Main
give that-
Street.
I hate to, I'm always the person that says leave the personal opinion out, but you cannot give a corporation a tax break. They're just not, they're gonna do not, they're gonna.
Why?
take
It's an
it-
incentive.
What was that? What? I didn't hear.
Incentive, right? I mean, it helps
Right.
them invest in our town.
But I mean, if we look at corporate, it's only gonna be, there's 2 stores that are huge corporations, well, 3 that are big corporations here.
Once we get the Dollar General in.
Right.
then it'll be 3.
But I think that would help everybody as
That'll
a,
be the downfall
That's what
there.
I'm afraid of up here.
Well, and not to. So I'll play devil's advocate. You'll see the Dollar Generals like they did the
Right.
one in Niantic. They're awful.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
hates them, but they serve a purpose. And I think also we can agree that a lot of the people that go in there are at-risk people or
right,
elderly, what have you, but they're always clean. As bad a rap as a Dollar General gets, either one in there in Niantic,
you know, you got a good point.
they're always clean and they're well lit and they're bright.
Yeah.
So
That's damn it, you're
and they
right.
serve a purpose.
The one in Warrenburg next to Lowe's, I don't know if that's. a
Is-
dollar store
That
or
is,
Dollar
that's one of the
General.
Dollar
One's-
Trees. That's
That's
old
Dollar
school.
Tree, yeah.
That's the one that's in half
That was so
on the
good.
bridge.
That's Dollar General.
Yeah.
Dollar General.
Yeah.
Well, I think Dollar General and Dollar other one of this, the ones that look the same. are the-
Where's the Economic Development Commission?
Where?
Shouldn't it be part of this conversation?
We were
Yeah,
waiting for them.
we've been waiting since 6 o'clock for them.
So I was looking at their agendas and their minutes, and it looks like they haven't been active in a while. Are they, do they exist?
I have no idea.
Wait, is there a point where the members can be revote? Like, at what point does the powers to be step in and say, okay, we need to get a new task force?
Is it
here?
appointed?
It's appointed.
So when their term
3
expires.
years.
they could-
Every 3 years.
the Board of Selectmen could elect.
Why do they have to wait that
Well,
long?
that's true. So there was a planning and zoning member who was removed. So that could be done for economic development too.
Maybe
Let's
the
not
board, like the
go
board
last,
of
you know.
meeting.
I'm not.
They just lost a great candidate for the Board of Finance that would probably do very well with business because he's a retired banker.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
but you know, it's like, I know one young lady who's very bright that resigned from the EDC because it was just, couldn't get anywhere.
For sake of time, do we have any other like things that we need to
No.
discuss?
Just, planning and zoning, that was everything, was those. Clearly, we talked conservation and wetlands, unless you guys have something that we didn't see.
Well, I was just gonna put a bow on the Falls Landing. They wanted to subdivide into 4 lots and they were going to gift them all, so there was no open space set aside. And so we asked for a few sort of design changes based on wetlands, so that's still sort of pending, so they're gonna come before us tomorrow, and there might be more to update, but that's essentially, it's still up in the air.
And
Alright.
gifted circumvents need the law where it says they have to give or pay.
Correct, yeah, there's a list that
But
actually.
why can't you guys like mandate proof?
We
that-
asked for proof.
Yeah, that was one of the.
And but there's also no time, there's no,
You can sell it the next day.
So you.
Yeah, that's the issue I have with
Right.
the law itself is like, yeah, I can gift it to my kid.
Yeah.
And they can turn around in a week or whatever and just, okay, cool. we're
but
selling
what
it.
what if the new buyer because it's already been subdivided and developed, has no, they don't have, there's no way you could come back and say like, okay, that's fine for the gifting, but the minute it gets sold the first time, then at that point, the new buyer, the new owner is liable for this open space.
And if they're not subdividing, there's no mechanism really to enforce that.
That horse left the barn.
Right.
Interesting little loophole
Yep.
that we learned about.
Lori, did we have anything from the land trust? Any updates or anything?
Nothing, I mean, we already talked about the 2 possible conservation easements or whatever, and I mean, nothing really new to say.
Didn't you have, I don't mean that, I think you had, what about the dedication? You just did a dedication, it's escaping me. Is
Oh,
it the-
yeah, that was, we opened a new trail at Rattling Valley.
Yes.
That was fun. Did a pretty good attendance there. Yep, next Thursday we'll be at High Nine. It's our last meeting of the year, so if anybody's around and want to come and see us.
Wait a minute, you guys have meetings at High Nine?
Yeah,
What the hell? Why are we at the town hall?
Why would we meet at the town hall, Tony?
Listen, hey, for the people that are land trust aficionados and that sort of thing, I believe it's at 12:30 this Saturday. There's a walking tour at Gillette's Castle of his old railroad train right of way.
Cool.
Yeah,
I regrettably can't make it because I gotta get my tree done, but
Yeah.
for those that are interested, I'd love to
Yeah,
do
that's
it
really
myself. I
cool.
wish I had time because there are a lot of people that think that it's those old structures along the river and those were just walking paths.
Yeah.
So this is a totally separate walk along the entire train track or right away that he had on the property.
Cool.
Lori, I was gonna say, we also had new signage too. We put up the Union Street sign down in town.
yes, we did.
And the other one, I'm forgetting what the other,
That was at Rattling.
Rattling
Rattling
Valley.
Valley.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I have one other topic, quick, I think it was 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, Bob Doan came to your meeting with a conceptual plan to subdivide a piece of Papucha's property at the end of,
Oh, yeah.
Witch Hazel Drive.
Yes.
And so you had a question where, he's keeping this big, like 40-acre lot and he's taking 3. And you said, what about or you said, what about that big lot? And he said, that's not part of the subdivision.
Yeah.
And you said, what do you mean it's not part of the
Right.
subdivision? Like you're taking a 60-acre lot and dividing it into 4 pieces. Do
Yes.
you hear any more about that? Because we haven't heard from him, but I don't know if there's wetlands on the property.
There are wetlands on the property.
Okay.
2, statutorily, it is a lot, and 3,
Right,
I think that's why we haven't heard from him, just because he has to give open space.
gotcha, okay. Thanks.
Or
Just
leave
wanted to
it-
make
or
sure
leave
that
it.
one wasn't gonna slip.
What's that?
Or leave it whole.
Or leave it whole.
And depending in that circumstance, I feel that could be an area that would be better to preserve as open space in that
Yes.
it abuts
Like,
Leonard Schmidt and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
So like, that's a good example of we should get like
Right.
land set aside, not money.
yeah,
For sure.
I think there's actually a couple more problems with that. I'm glad you brought that up. I think his cul-de-sac is over the allowable length. He had to look into fire protection, because I'm not sure where the closest fire pond was.
Mhm.
And because it's a huge piece of property, he actually has to show how it would be developed in the future. That's in our regulations, so he would have to show, you know, 10 years from now, they plan on having a road come out to, what the hell is that, 145?
Yeah.
So he would have to show that road, you know, feasibly, what they plan on doing, so I think that he's got a lot to work on back at the drawing board.
That was one of like, just one of the things I've been involved with wetlands is just, wetlands, the land trust. It's just identifying specific, like, kind of more high priority, or high interest areas that, you know, we would be interested in protecting, and that area is definitely on our radar.
Alright, yeah, there's the piece, let's. If you go up the new Rattling Valley Trail and you get on Rattling Valley Road, you can't get to Book Hill Woods, the Canfield Woods.
Hmm.
Are any of those high priority? There's
We-
3 that I know of that are.
We've
like-
talked about a linkage
Yeah.
between that, yeah, and just kind of, you know, I know there's one property owner we're working with. I've talked to Mark Ryer too. Which he was kind of like, yeah, we could talk. I know he'd want money for it, but
Yeah,
which isn't out of the
right,
question.
Yep.
But
there's a huge piece that is, oh, not by Bob Dome, but a different dome.
yeah,
And then there's one down the road that's got a foundation on it.
I don't know.
Almost where the llamas are.
Okay, I don't know. I'm familiar.
Alright, I'll have to send that one to you, because I remember looking at it, I'm like, oh, no one's mentioned this one, and it can get you there, so.
Yeah, I was talking to Mark a little bit about it, and I know we have another land trust person. I think by No Don or
Yep.
something that they're
Okay.
investigating. So.
We've had the trolley
Yeah,
right act.
the Essex Land Trust is also helping us out, trying to make that connection too, because they know a lot of people. We all know each other.
No, I
I
mean,
think one more thing of note and is that we had a complaint. We've had some people have their doors knocked on near the pond on Witch Hazel Road, Witch Hazel Drive. That's our Falls River Preserve down there. And we sent out a notice to all the neighbors that just explaining to them that we did not give anyone permission to trap or hunt on that property.
Hmm.
To make it clear, and you know, to all of you as well, that we did not give that permission. So if anyone does see anything happening out there, either, you know, call the police because it's trespassing and poaching, or call me and I'll call the police. One of us, and we'll call the police. That's really all we can do. We don't really, you know, how are we going to know what's going
Right.
on? So.
alright,
I guess the bigger issue with that was I think someone was knocking on a neighbor's door to get access to their property, not realizing it was land trust property. Is that correct, Lori?
Yeah,
part-
that's, I did say that, but you probably didn't, I got chopped off.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't.
At least they were asking permission.
Yeah. That's very
We are going to be posting, hopefully next week, we are going to be putting up those little orange signs that say no hunting, no trapping. And we are going to get another one of our big signs that says Falls River Preserve and put that up right by the fire pond on that road, because that's on our property also.
you know, I was gonna ask you a question, and this is kind of. If you're, let's say you're on the land trust property and, or the Conservation Commission's property, however you look at Canfield Woods. Who do you contact about dogs there? Do you go to the animal control? Do you call the police? Do you guys know the answer to this? This is for anybody.
I think-
Well, if they're on our property, they should be on a leash, and that's true for all the state land.
Yep,
It's really hard to enforce that, quite honestly, because
I
even.
meant
for-
like a vicious dog.
Yeah.
Oh, I would call the wild, whatever it is you called it, the
Animal
control
control.
officer.
Yeah, okay. Some guy's dog should bite me twice. Big brown dog, and I was like, dude, can you bite your dog? I was like, oh, that's nice, I'll get bit and it'll be fine. So I just didn't know how to handle that. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Anyway,
I'm a
sorry.
Dog lover.
I have three.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, off on a tangent here. So land trust, you guys are good?
Yeah, I think so.
Alright. On to item 5, next steps for the POCD, I think we covered that already.
Yeah, we were really waiting for economic development survey just so that would give us guidance. And
I think if you mention this to Alan tomorrow, I think he has a mission about this now. By the way, I won't be at tomorrow, I'll be at tomorrow's meeting, but I
Oh,
won't really
okay.
be at tomorrow's meeting. I have a
That's right,
meeting in
you're-
Branford too,
You're
so,
listening.
yeah,
Okay.
Alan will chair. I'll try and chime in if I can, but I would definitely mention that. And with that being said,
Yeah, we should resign. I don't resign.
yeah, that sounds pretty good. Guys, I think we're gonna call this adjournment.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for showing up.
Have a good night, everybody.
Yep, good night.